first thing you need to do is decide if you're going to work in metric or imperial. Imperial just means feet and inches, metric is centimetres and millimetres. I would highly recommend you work in imperial because it's less numbers, okay? A plasterboard in metric is 2,400 by 1,200. That's easy because it's round numbers. But when you get to 1,136 and 1,372, it can get a little bit confusing because there's so many numbers involved. Whereas if you work in imperial, you're just down to inches, 1/8 of an inch. So come in, I'll show you what I mean. Right? So let's say I want to cut a board here, okay? That is 19 and 5, so it's 19 and 5/8, okay? So your eighths, you divide, you know, let's use this for an example, okay? There's 14, okay? And there's 15. Now 14 and a half is there. That's actually 4/8 there. So I could say 14 and 4, okay? Because the eighths are in between. So you've got the half there, you've got a quarter, you've got 3/4, and then your eighths in between there. So you've got 14 and an eighth, 1/8. So that's 14 and 1. You've got 14 and a quarter, or it's 2/8, because there's an eighth, there's an eighth. So it's 14 and 2, 14 and 3, 14 and 4, 14 and 5, 14 and 6, 14 and 7. You wouldn't say 14 and 8 because that's actually 15, okay? Now some fellas will say 14 and a quarter, 14 and a half, or they'll just talk in eighths all the time. So I could say, cut me 14 and 6, and I know that 14 and 6 is basically there. It's easier, it's an easier way of doing it to work in eighths of an inch. See this gap? It's about 1/8 of an inch. That's fine. We'll plaster that, no problem whatsoever. You don't have to cut things super tight with plasterboards because it's not a finished product. You're going to plaster over it. So just going 1/8 of an inch smaller makes the board fit nice and snug, and you can tape over any little gap and plaster over it. Now when it comes to cutting boards, the easiest way is to have them all stood up, leaned against the wall like this. Don't have them lean too far because they'll start to curve. Don't have them too upright because they can all tip over. And if you have them stacked nice and neat like that, they're easy to work with, they're easy to cut. A lot of fellas put them flat on the floor, but there's a few issues with that. One, you've got to keep crouching down to work on them. If the slab's damp, you're going to get a lot of moisture into the boards, and they're just harder to cut. It's much easier to cut a board when it's stood up on a pack like this. I'm going to cut a piece of plasterboard to fit on here. So, the actual wall we're covering is exactly 12 inches. I'm going to allow 1/2 inch for adhesive and 1/2 inch for another plasterboard on this side. So that puts me to 13. So it's 13 inches. (81 and 4), okay? 81 and a half, but we're working in eighths, so we just say 81 and 4. Now, which set of numbers do you think's easy to remember? If I said to you, go and cut a board, 13, be 81 and 4, or if I said to you, 330 by 2,071, okay? So if you've got loads of these cuts to do, and they're different sizes, it's easier to remember the smaller numbers. Now look where my finger's positioned. My finger is going to stop the tape, and I'm pinching the tape there. I'm pinching hold of the tape at 13, so I can't go any further. That's where that's stopping, okay? I'm going to take the knife, I'm going to place it at the bottom of the tape measure, here. Okay, I'm not going to cut into the tape. I'm going to sit it right there, very gently. I'm going to press the tape and the knife slightly together. I'm not squeezing it tight. And then the key is to make both hands move at the same time. That now, anywhere you measure, there's going to be 13 inches on that cut line. Okay, the board's been sliced at 13. Now we'll do the 81 and 4. Just come in, come in. There's 81, 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8. Mark that. You can leave your knife where it is. Put your tape up to your knife. Hold it on the end of the plasterboard. Can you see that line there? Can you see that on the camera? It's hard to see in this light, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, now I've made me cuts on this side of the plasterboard. What I'm going to do now is take it. The cut is there, 13 inches down. I'm going to just bang the board and it snaps right on the cut. Now, a little trick for you. I'm going to cut this side of the plasterboard so I can take it off. Now the plasterboard is 94 and 4 long. By the time I'm down there, I can't support this end if I'm working on my own. So what I'm going to do is start cutting slightly in, about 2 inches in. So if you look where the knife is there, I'm not all the way at the end. I'm going to leave a little tab left on there, and that's going to keep the board in position. So now if I didn't do that, the end of that plasterboard would be flapping around now all over. It'd probably break off and rip the paper. But because I've left it attached there, all I have to do, sit it back on the pile, snap, that's it, it's not attached. 81 and 4's there, so we can just cut that there, snap. Now, you can cut through the plasterboard from this side. You don't always have to go onto that side, but helps if you've got a nice sharp blade to do it from this side. And that's our board ready to go. One thing I find very handy is one of these surf foams. Now these ones by Marshalltown have guides on the side of them so you can't fall off the edge of the board. Good practice just to keep the edge of the board. So if you look at the texture of it, let me put it on here. Sometimes this plaster will break jagged, so that gives it a nice smooth edge for you to work to with your next plasterboard. Just that. You don't need to go too crazy with this. Just like that's enough. And then this plasterboard, once the adhesive's on, will fit there. Look at that. It's like it grew there. Using the slice and snap technique is okay, but if you've got to cut a fine little slither, you'll find that they'll break up really easy. So I'll show you a different way of doing it. Let's say for instance, we need to cut a little sliver of board to fit in somewhere that's only 1 inch wide. So if I cut that inch there, I'm using this plasterboard as a guide for me. Now, if I try and snap that inch, it won't snap. So what I'm going to do now, it'll just break, certain parts of it will just break off. So I'm going to spin it round. I'm going to cut 1 inch on this side. So that's both sides has now been sliced. Both sides has been cut. And you can cut strips without them breaking up. If you're an absolute beginner and you're practicing this, this is how my dad taught me. I'll show you a little trick that you can do. Okay, when you're taking your measurements, just take an old scrap bit of plasterboard and without your knife, just leave that to the side a minute. Just practice sliding down the board, okay? So I'm going to cut a piece at 5. So I'm just going to slide down, and what I'm doing is I'm holding the tape. I'm just marking the board. Now, I can see there's a little line there. If you zoom in, can you see that little line? That's where the tape's marked it. It's quite hard to see. Let's see if you can see another one. come around this side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this. What I'm doing is I'm practicing getting the muscle memory for both hands to move at the same time and for them to keep this tape measure taut. What I'm not doing is doing this and coming in or doing this. These are all the things that beginners are prone to, okay? So you're just practicing getting both hands going at the same time, same speed, keeping the tape taut. You can mark your boards like this and then very slowly follow the line with your knife. It's a slow way of doing it, but it's easy for beginners to do it that way, you know. But once you get good, you'll get used to being able to hold your tape, pinch the blade and the tape together, and slice. Now this is only the beginning. I recommend that you watch this video next. Also, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I'm not going to get one of these silver play buttons without your help.